Okay, so here we go. All right. So I will. We're going to start with Acts 27, which is our text for this Sunday. I actually started reading it on Friday the 16th, and we'll continue it until let's see, till next Friday or this coming Friday, the 23rd. We'll finish it up. So it's a fairly lengthy chapter, but the action moves pretty quickly. So basically, this is the story of the shipwreck. So Paul is finally on the boat to go to Rome, and as everything else in Paul's life, nothing is easy with Paul. He takes no direct routes anywhere, and this journey is no exception. So he starts out by he's embarking on a ship that's going to sail along the coast of Asia, which is Asia Minor, so in modern day Turkey. And it's a ship that it's called a coastal ship, where they are planning to make stops all along the way in these little ports and towns along the way. But he's put under the care of Julius, a centurion, who's a Roman centurion, and Julius treats Paul kindly. So when they go to Sidon, he's allowed to see his friends, and they offer him hospitality. And then they go and when they leave Sidon, so they start in Caesarea and they go to Sidon, and then they start going north towards Asia Minor, and they find their way all the way to a city named Myra, which is in Lycia, which is again an Asian province in Asia Minor. So it talks about Cilicia, which is where Tarsus is, and Pamphylia, which is the next province over, and then Lycia is the next one over from there, west from there. And when they get there, they change ships. Julius finds a ship that is bound for Rome. It's an Alexandrian ship, so it's coming from Egypt. So if you look at a map of where Myra is and where Alexandria is, basically it's a straight north shot. So Alexandria is directly south of this town, Myra, and so it has it would have wheat and grain on it, because Egypt is the breadbasket of the world. I mean, the fertile Nile Delta, where they can grow just about anything all the time, and so Rome needed grain for bread, and so they would buy it from Egypt, and it would come on ships like this. So they get on, and verse 7 says that they sailed slowly for a number of days and arrived with difficulty off. And the name of that town is pronounced Cnidus, like what's on your leg, knee does. I think the audio Bible for the NIV pronounced it Snidus. But the original language, it's actually a KN and a long E sound. So anyway, just say it with confidence, and everybody will believe you. Oh, that's what I tell everybody. And so they sail. They sail under the lee of Crete off Salmone. Now, if you haven't looked that up yet, which I bet you have, but the idea there is that they're trying to put a piece of land between them and the wind that is hitting them. So they're sort of it's a protection kind of mode for the ship. So they're sailing. What it's telling us is that they're sailing on the south side of the island, so that the wind is bumping up against the island and sort of being dispersed and doesn't have quite as much effect on them. And Salmone is sort of this little bitty island off the far eastern coast of Crete. So I actually have a map that I want to show you, because this next part you're going to want to be able to see. So let's see. So this is a satellite image of the island of Crete. And so this is actually off of Wikipedia, but this little island, I think right here is as best I can tell, is Salmone. It's just this little bitty piece right here. Let me see if I can move you out.
My Bible map shows that's where what they call Cape Salamini.
Yeah. So this is where,
Salmone.
yeah. So they're obviously Asia Minor's up here, and so they're coming down. So the winds are coming out of the north, so they're coming down this way, and so they're going this way, and they're trying to get around this island, and then they're trying to get down on this side. And so that says there's verse 8 says they're sailing past it with difficulty. We came to a place called Fair Havens near the city of Lacie. Now, Fair Havens is right about here, just before this, vast, the land goes almost directly north. So Fair Havens is about right there. And it's really the last place where they would be able to dock and have protection from the wind coming out of the north, which is what they're experiencing. So they hang out right there for just a little bit, and then when you turn to verse 9, Luke tells us that they've lost time, and sailing was now dangerous because even the fast had already gone by. And I will I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and then come back. So what he's telling us is that the fast is Yom Kippur. It's the Day of Atonement, which is late September, early October in the Jewish calendar. And so so what happens in the Mediterranean is, and depending on where you read, it's either, it's basically October, November, December, January, February are bad months to be on a ship in the middle of the Mediterranean. Just those winter months, the weather's just unpredictable, and you don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere on that. So Paul is advising them to stay where they are for the winter, because he thinks that there will be danger and heavy loss, not only of cargo, but also of our lives. So he's advising them to stay in Fair Havens. It's not, it may or may not be the best place, but it's better than trying to set out and find another place that they may not ever get to. And turns out Paul's going to be right. But so he's saying that they need to wait for about 6 months, basically, before they can sail again. The centurion paid more attention to the pilot and the owner of the ship and what Paul said, and they decided that it wasn't favorable or suitable for spending the winter. So they put out to sea on the chance, notice it's on the chance, that they could somehow get to Phoenix. Now I'm going to show you the map again, because the geography is interesting. So here's Crete again. So here's Fair Havens on this near this little point right here. And I'm going to zoom in, and this right here is where Phoenix is. This little, you can kind of see this little boot kind of hanging off of there.
Right.
And so it has two ports. It has this side and it has this side. So that's the whole idea that Paul talks about, how it has a harbor facing southwest and northwest. So so it would protect from winds coming from this direction, and it would protect from winds coming this direction, from the north and from the west. So it was it was basically the last place where they could stop that had any kind of civilization that they could rely on. And so that's where they're trying to get. But again, they're here and they're trying to get here. But what ends up happening is that even though they have a fair wind there when they set out, they begin to, they get out past this point right here, and the wind comes out of the northeast and it blows them off course, and they find themselves sort of trying to use this island here. And I got to go to the next one. So that's Cauda. And so that's that little island that they were trying to, where they get the lifeboat back up into the ship. So they come out here and they're trying to go this way. They get blown down here. They get the boat back in order here, but they are they're trying to figure out how to get where they need to go, and it's just not it's not working out the way that they want. So they begin to throw down the anchors, trying to slow them down because they're trying to avoid going too close to the coast of Africa. The Syrtis is basically a series of sandbars where they would run aground on the northern coast of Africa. So they lower the sea anchor and they just kind of let the wind carry them. And then they begin to, verse 18, they began to throw the cargo overboard. And then 2 days later, they begin to throw the ship's tackle overboard. So, any extra ropes, any extra, parts of the boat that they don't need, sails and things like that, anything that's weighing them down, they're just tossing it overboard. And they're doing that to lighten their load. They're doing that so that, so if the boat is sitting or the ship is sitting here in the water, they want to lighten it. So they sit here in the water because they don't know what's underneath. They don't know what's underneath, where the rocks are and where the coastline is and all that kind of stuff. And so verse 20 says that neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest raged. All hope of our being saved was at last abandoned. So at this moment, the sailors are giving up hope. They can't see the sun during the day and they can't see the stars at night, which are the very things that they need to navigate. And so they're like, okay, we can't see anything. We can't, our guiding lights aren't there. So we don't know which way to go. We don't know where we are. We don't know how close we are to land. We don't know if we're going in the right direction. They don't know any of that because they can't use their navigation tools. So, so verse 21, Paul stands up and he realizes that they haven't eaten for a while. And he almost takes this tone of, I told you so, kind of, but I think he stopped short of it. But he says, I urge you now to keep up your courage, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. And he talks about the vision of an angel who stood before him and says, do not be afraid, Paul, you must stand before the emperor. So clarify, again, confirming his call to go to Rome and stand in front of the emperor. And he says, indeed, God has granted safety to all those who are sailing with you. So everybody is there. Everybody's going to make it. So he says, keep up your courage, for I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I've been told, but we will have to run aground on some island. So he says that we're all going to be safe, but the ship's going to be lost. And for a sailor to hear that is, I'm sure that's devastating. For the owner of the ship, that would be devastating because they don't make money if their ship crashes and falls apart. They might as well lose their life at that point because their livelihood on that particular moment in that particular time is gone. But he says we're all going to make it. So there's the trade-off, I guess. So then when the 14th night had come, As we were drifting across the Sea of Adria, about midnight, the sailors suspected that they were nearing land. So it's been 14 nights since they set sail from Crete, and they're in the middle of the night. The sailors begin to suspect that they're nearing land, and it's probably because they can hear water. They can hear waves hitting rocks or hitting land somewhere. But it's the middle of the night. There's no stars, no nothing. They can't see where the land is. And so they do the only thing they know how to do, which is to take soundings, which is, how deep is the water right now? And so, 20 fathoms is the first one. And then they take another one a little bit later, and it's 15. So depending on how far apart those are, and we don't really know how far apart those the times of those soundings are, they realize that they are quickly approaching shallower water, and that means rocks. That means they're probably the sound of the waves hitting the rocks is getting closer and louder, and so they throw down 4 anchors from the boat, and they pray for day to come. They pray for light. They pray for some way to see what's going on. And then the sailors, just having thrown down the anchors to try to save the boat, and save the people, they decide to try to escape from the ship. They'd lowered the lifeboat down into the water on the pretext of putting out anchors from the bow. So in the research I did, I guess there's the way that they would have put out anchors is that they would have sailed the boat a little bit out in front of the ship, and then put down the anchor, so that the anchor hit land or hit the bottom in a way that could sort of stabilize. If they had the anchors in the back, slow them down, and the anchors in the front would sort of stabilize, and it wouldn't necessarily like pull the boat apart, kind of deal, or capsize it. But Paul says to the centurion, these men have to stay on the ship, or else nobody can be saved. And so the soldiers cut away the ropes, and they set the boat adrift. And so basically they're all now with the same fate. So if the ship goes down, everybody goes down. If the ship makes it, they all make it, kind of situation. And so just before daybreak, verse 33, Paul urges them to take some food. He realizes that it's been 2 weeks since they've eaten. And really, whether they've been conserving. Oh, okay. Whether they've been conserving.
Sorry, the dog wanted in, but now he ran off again. So.
No problem. So whether they've been conserving food, not knowing how long they're going to be on the boat, or whether they just haven't eaten because they've been just so stressed about everything that's going on, or whether they're running low, he says, you've been in suspense, you've been waiting and remaining without food. So I urge you to take some food, for it will help you survive. For none of you will lose a hair from your head. So again, he's reminding them that God's promised that they're gonna make it. And so he says this, he takes bread, he gives thanks in the presence of all, he broke it and began to eat. And then they were all encouraged, so they took some food for themselves, all 276. And depending on what note you might have in your Bible, there's some differences about whether it's 276 or 76 or somewhere near 76. Just depends on. There's other ancient. It says, other ancient authorities read, 76 or almost 76. So it just depends on which manuscript you're looking at. But after they have, verse 38, after they had satisfied their hunger, they lightened the ship by throwing the wheat into the sea. So either this is, this moment in verse 38 has a couple of possible meanings. One is that they have resigned themselves to, okay, the boat's going to crash. And so, we're going to just do, whatever we can to lighten the load, get the boat higher up in the water with all these waves and things like that, and the shoreline coming. Or they are believing that that Paul has said that what he said is true, and that that they will survive, and that they will be provided with food again in the future. So so that they don't need what's on the boat right now. So either way, they throw it out. And then the chapter closes beginning with verse 39. So in the morning, first light, now they can actually see what's going on. They didn't recognize the land, but they noticed a bay with a beach on which they planned to run the ship ashore if they could. So they cast off the anchors and left them in the sea. So they cut the ropes and they turned the sail towards the wind. They loosened the ropes that tied the steering oars, and they make for the beach. They just use the wind, and it just drives them forward. Before they get to the beach, they strike a reef, and the bow gets stuck, and the stern is being pummeled by the waves behind them, and the boat begins to break apart. So the soldiers plan to kill all the prisoners because, remember, just like the Philippian jailer who wakes up to the prison bars all being open, he knows that it's his life for theirs, and so these soldiers know that it's their life for the prisoners if they don't account for them. So they're like, well, it's easier just to kill them now and not worry about anything. But the centurion Julius wishes to save Paul. He keeps them from carrying out their plan, and he orders everybody who can swim to jump in the water, and everybody who can't swim to jump in the water and grab onto something and float to the beach. And so it was that all were brought safely to land. So Paul's vision becomes a reality in that moment. So they have. So if we go back to, let's see if I can go back to my screen here. So they've left. No, hold on. There we go.
Oh, that was a good one.
Oh, yeah, this one. Yeah. So you can see Fair Havens is there, and Phoenix is right there.
And where's this one coming? Where's this map coming from?
This is BibleAtlas.org. I'll copy the link into the chat.
Okay.
And where'd you go? I'll do it in a minute. So this is off the same website that I use for doing original language study. So there are, let's see, I'm going to go to the Greek islands. Where'd you go? Anyway, we don't know where they land, but they land in Malta. Let's see here. Let me look real quick. No, I don't want a vacation home. There we go. I don't need a vacation home in there. So, yeah, these are too close to really tell you where they are.
Yeah.
Let's go here and go back.
Anyway, it's way west of.
It's way. I mean, it's way west from where they were planning on getting. But the good thing is that it is almost directly south of Italy. So they, while they sailed far off course from where they originally intended to go, they actually end up nearby where they're trying to go. So it's just a little farther south than they were originally planning on going. But they are all safely on the land, and there's St. Paul's Bay actually on Malta. If you actually go there, you can actually go to the place where they think the ship actually crashed into the reef and broke apart. You know, just like you go to Crete and go to Fair Havens, I suppose. Anyway, all right. So again, chapter 27 is this whole ship. It's this journey that Paul takes on the ship, and landing eventually in Malta. And we don't actually learn that until 28 verse 1, but there they are. Okay. So very good. What questions do you have about chapter 27?
Well, we'll go back to that Friday, I guess. Let's see. As far as sail under the lee of, we've talked a little bit about the wind and whatnot. In another translation, it uses the word shelter. So he's using the land as a shelter against the wind.
Correct.
Just one of those things. What was on board the ship, it was grain, including wheat, because they threw all the non-wheat off first, I guess. They saved the wheat for when they ate just before they crashed.
Right.
But what I wanted to do is mention, let's see, where is it that it talks about it couldn't sail into the wind?
Oh, right.
What I found on that, this was a grain freighter taking grain grown in Egypt, Italy. According to a guy named Hughes, the typical grain freighter of that period was 140 feet long and 36 feet wide. It had one mast with a small square sail, and instead of what we think of as a rudder, it steered with two paddles on the back part of the ship. They were sturdy, but because of its design, they couldn't sail into the wind.
Right.
And so that's why they were having so much trouble. It just wasn't designed that way, and that's why Paul said, "Wait a minute, I've been on boats before, and they don't steer well in this wind."
Right.
So just thought I'd share that.
Yeah.
The fast day in question was probably October 5th in the year AD 59.
59.
Winter was approaching, so the weather was going to become more dangerous for sailing. The dangerous season for sailing was from about September 14th to November 11th. And after that, you just plain didn't try.
Right.
It was just too dangerous. Because Paul had traveled so many miles in a boat, he could advise, but as we found out, they wouldn't necessarily listen to him. The name Fair Havens was not entirely accurate, at least not accurate in the winter.
Yeah, right.
The position of the bay made it vulnerable to winter storms and winds. It was not an ideal place to wait out the coming season. It was also not a fun place to spend all winter. And the crew of the ship didn't look forward to months in a small town. One commentator suggests that the local Chamber of Commerce is the one that named it Fair Havens.
That's right.
So it wasn't someplace you really wanted to spend 6 months, as you will,
Right.
as you mentioned. Let's see here.
Yeah, I read somewhere that the reason that Luke mentions Lucia is probably because they would have to put the boat in at Fair Havens and then travel back and forth to this town that's a couple of miles or whatever away, and they would have to trade off guarding the boat.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So.
Which part of this are you going to make your sermon, by the way?
So I'm going to start in verse 13 and go to the end.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. What
What?
I'll have I'm dividing it into 4 sections. So 13 so the basically the daily reading. So
Oh, okay.
20, 21 to 26, 27 to 32, and then 33 to 38. And then I'll tack on a brief synopsis of the shipwreck.
Okay. One of the reason I asked that, Paul didn't say, I believe in God. Every demon in hell agrees with the existence of God.
Hmm.
Paul declared his total confidence in God's knowledge of his situation and his promise in this situation. He couldn't believe the sailors, the ship, the sails, the wind, the centurion, human ingenuity, or anything else, only God. This was not a fair weather faith. He believed God in the midst of the storm
Hmm.
when circumstances were at their worst. So
Yep.
this person's making a real good point that he not only believed in God, but he believed God.
Right.
So, um, let's see here. What else did I find? They bring up about sensing land was near and mentioned the same thing you did. They probably heard breakers
Hmm.
in the distance.
Yeah.
I think that is all that I have. That just in addition to what you've already brought up. Oh, two things though. One is, and you may touch this in your sermon. I don't know. I feel like there is there's a lot of symbolism in this one as far
Hmm.
as being on the boat and whether or not you're safe. And a lot of people in the boat don't agree with the person that believes in God. Is there a bigger message here than just one of a boat trip?
Right. So the answer to that is yes. So you'll notice, and I think N.T. Wright made a big deal about this, about the use of save, safety. It's that same
Right.
word, um, and I don't go I don't go in that direction, although I very well could have. Um, I what I did in my message, because I recorded yesterday, um, is I talked about the um, the fact that this ship at sea storm story should remind us of Jonah and his ship at sea story,
Right.
and how Jonah gets in trouble on a boat because he's running away from God. But Paul is on a ship that's in trouble, but he's answering his call. He's going towards where he needs to go. So he's like the anti-Jonah. And so original readers of this, and those of us who have, again, who read Acts with the Old Testament in mind, will see that story, and just, and just really the first half, first 2/3 of the first chapter of the book of Jonah has that story in it. And there's the whole tossing things overboard, and
Mm-hmm.
but then Jonah's sleeping down, down in the hull, and they come up and they're like, hey, what's going on here? And he's like, oh yeah, this is my fault. And so chucks him over. But Paul makes the point that nobody's going to get, everybody's going to be safe. We have to all stay here. So anyway, so there's so I make that connection. But then what I do is when I get to the end, I'm going to talk about the so verse 22 is where I'll link back to. It says, I urge you now to keep up your courage, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. And so that the ship will be lost is where I come back to. They'll have to run aground. And what the point I made is that we as a church are in the midst of a storm. COVID-19, water damage, all that kind of stuff. And the ship of what church, worship, ministry, things like that look like prior to that is gone. But we're building a new ship. And we are, when we come back into our building later this summer, it'll look similar, but it'll feel different. Things will happen in a similar way, but they will be different. And we can, and the ship that is no longer, but we now have a new ship. And we will use that ship to get to continue the movement towards fulfilling the mission of making disciples and transforming our community in the same way that Paul in chapter 28 will get on a new ship and sail to his destination. But I kind of teed that up and then left it hanging for everybody. So, spoiler alert and all that kind of stuff. But next week's message is called Tag Your It, because for chapter 28, because Acts doesn't end the way that we want it to. It just sort of like, and Paul hung out in Rome for 2 years on his own accord. And there's like, but wait, did he get to the emperor? Did he, what happened? We know that he died at some point. So what happened? There's this, it's just this, it's like The Sopranos, it's like, whoosh, I didn't watch The Sopranos, but I heard about the last episode, and it just, it just fades to black. And it's like, wait, that's not the way that things are supposed to end. They're supposed to have this nice little thing, and you tie it up with a bow, and all things are good. But that's not what happens. And the reason is, at least the reason I'll make the case for next week, is that the whole idea is that now it's our turn. Now it's our turn to go into the world, to the ends of the earth, and to proclaim the message of Jesus. That's what we're supposed to do. So I just gave you a heads up on what's coming. So, anyway,
how about the having the meal and breaking bread and giving thanks to God? That's
yep.
like
I hit that on too. I hit on that too. So
okay.
It's so what I did was I told I came back to it and I said, he took bread, he gave thanks, he broke it, and then he gave it away. That's the fourfold action of Holy Communion. And so in this moment, while Paul is not sharing communion with them, I very clearly state that, it's not a sacramental act that he's doing, but it is a sacred moment that he is creating at this time, because he's taking what he has, he's blessing it, he's breaking it, and he's giving it. He's going through those fourfold things. So his his letters, his first letter to the Corinthians, and his explanation of the institution of the Lord's Supper is there, and harkens back to Jesus and the Last Supper and what he does there. So it's again, when we read that story and we read that moment in this chapter, it should like go, people's brains should be pinging like crazy about, whoa, wait a minute, that sounds like da 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 da, and it's like, it does. So and it should, and the other thing is that, again, they haven't eaten for 14 days. We're not quite sure, and I didn't make this point in my message, but you can make it in class if you want, is that they haven't eaten for 14 days. And then for whatever reason, Luke makes the very specific, there were 276 of us, and they had satisfied their hunger. Should remind us of the feeding of the 5,000, where Jesus takes fish and bread and a little sack lunch and feeds the multitude. And so it should ping off of that story as well. You can have that one for free for class.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
I did not make that point in my sermon. But again, because Luke is very specific about these 276 people,
Yes.
you know, that got fed in this moment, and they had satisfied their hunger. I can't imagine how hungry people would be after 14 days.
Oh, me either.
So, so, and again, and then they throw all the the stuff, the wheat off the ship. It's like, wait a minute. We just ate for the first time in 2 weeks, and we're gonna chuck everything else that could possibly help us. Anyway, but yes, there's that fourfold moment, and so
Okay.
good deal.
I think as far as all the questions go, I think I've got a fairly good hold of what answers can be to those at any rate. Let me go ahead and ask you about this one though. April 20th. First question, how might Paul's vision provide peace to those on board the ship? Well, if they believe, it's gonna be provide peace, but if they don't believe, but what would your
So even if so I asked that question to the staff meeting on Monday, and they were they gathered around the idea that people were desperate for some kind of answer to what was going on. Why is the ship not sailing the way that we're supposed to? Why are we losing our courage? They're desperate for answers. So this moment would provide them, even if it was just a glimmer of hope, even if they weren't sure that Paul was telling the truth or anything like that, it might be just this moment of hope that they could hold on to and see what might happen in the midst of this. Because Paul proclaims it with the utmost confidence, and basically, I mean, he basically stakes his own life on it, because if things went south, then not pun not intended on that. Then they could toss him over and be like, you told us this was all going to work out, and now everything's wrecked, and everything and these people died, and now the ship's lost. So what you said was no good. So we're gonna chuck you into the ocean or into the Mediterranean. So I think it was for people like for Aristarchus and for Luke, they're going to have hope in that for sure. They're going to find peace in what Paul tells them. But for the rest of the folks whom we don't really know what their faith really is, there probably could have been just a glimmer of hope and peace that, okay, we're going to make it out of this alive. It may not be in the way that we thought it was, but maybe he's telling us what he certainly believes what he's telling us. So maybe we can hold on to that too. Hope that makes sense.
I think that's all I had.
Very cool. Okay. So you had asked earlier about May and June and July.
Yes.
So May, you are on your own. I will be. We'll have a standalone messages for each of the last 4 weeks of May. There's Mother's Day, and then we'll do confirmation on the 16th. We'll do Pentecost on the 23rd, and then Senior Sunday is going to be the 30th of May. Then beginning June 6th, we're going to start the end date is flexible, but it's a series through the book of Nehemiah on restoration, and we're going to parallel the restoration of Jerusalem's wall with the restoration of our building, with the hope that some point in the middle of July, middle to late July, we have the opportunity to celebrate the, just like the Israelites celebrated the full restoration of the wall around Jerusalem, that we'll be able to celebrate the restoration of our building and our return to being in person for worship. So we will, I will provide a PDF study guide for you and for anybody that wants one. It'll be similar in scope, that there will be a daily reading. We'll cover about 2 chapters each week, but I will pick a particular section of the readings to focus the message on for Sunday, and then there's one change that I'll make to, like, it'll be similar to this setup, but there'll be a change where the study guide or the PDF will also have a setup similar to what I did for Advent, where there's the focus, text and questions that are based on that. So that it'll give you guys as group leaders the opportunity to help folks gather around, because honestly, there's just a ton of material in there that is good stuff, but more than likely, there's several chapters of, like, listing of names and things like that are, they're good to read and you need to read it, but I'm certainly not going to stand up on Sunday and preach on or read through all those names as part of my message. I will refer to them and I'll talk about the significance of them, because they are significant. It's important to look at those, who it is that helped build the walls and all that kind of stuff, and what it means for all those people to have gathered around that project. But each message or each Sunday will have a particular text that centers on, and I'll give that to you so that you can be ready to have conversation about that, so that you're not trying to cover 2 chapters worth of material on a Sunday morning. It's just not feasible to do that much. So,
Okay.
so anyway, I'm working on that, and I'll have that hopefully. Give me a few more weeks to get that all put together and formatted the way that I want it. So hopefully by the middle of May, I'll have that for you. And
Okay,
that'll run, it starts June 6th. And right now, my hope is that we finish up and we have our celebration on the 18th of July. But I've also flexed it to the 25th if we need it, in case something goes awry. And so we'll just do that. And then then August will be, I don't know what August will be at the moment, but we'll kick off the long series in September, probably the weekend after Labor Day. So there'll be about 5 or 6 weeks that will either be some shorter things or some just more one-offs. But I'm still working on that. But I got May, June, and July done. So I'll give you something.
Very good.
I'll keep working.
Yes.
I'll keep working on August and September. So
Okay, but the long series won't start until after Labor Day. So
yeah,
August will be kind of like May.
Kinda, yeah. Unless I have a brilliant idea to bring to you as well. So.
And it is your hope and preference that we keep this going like we've been doing, as far as Sunday school will follow more or less what the sermon content is.
Yes, that's my hope.
Okay.
And again, that's if at some point it doesn't work out for y'all to do that, I'm okay with that. I just want to, my hope again is really to get folks engaged in Scripture on a regular basis, whether that's in their own personal devotion, whether that's in a smaller group context, and that they're deepening their discipleship that way. So
give us this day our daily bread.
There you go. So and I would love any kind of feedback that your class has about these, and how helpful they are, or what they might like to see included in future versions, just to make sure that we're keeping things, we're making it as accessible and as user-friendly as possible. Because I mean, not everybody, not everybody writes, like my wife doesn't write in her Bible. She utilizes this or another notebook that she writes in. But I got no problem writing in my Bible and scratching down notes and, drawing arrows and, things like that, asking questions. But that's just me. And other people may be like her, and some people maybe like me. So I just want to make sure these are as helpful as possible especially when we go to because these things cost a bit to put together. And so when we do the next one, I want to make sure that it's got everything that folks need. And but then also we gotta, I don't want it to be cost prohibitive for people to get it. So
Okay, I understand that.
Yeah. So because we ordered 250 of the first volume, and gave away about 200, or people bought 200 of them, so we had 50 left over. And then we only purchased 200 of this one, and folks sort of changed their practice. So some folks couples that bought two first time only bought one second time, and so even though we dropped our order number, we still didn't end up selling them all. So we we have a stockpile of both of them, and then we had to pay for them up front, so we didn't make our money back because I basically gave them to sold them to you at cost.
Okay.
Because I wanted to keep it inexpensive.
Sure. Okay.
All right, very good. Well, again, I appreciate you. If there's anything that you need between now and class time, just let me know, and we'll be back here again next week. All right.
Very good. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.